The New York Knicks have conquered LA nightlife as they get the win over the Lakers. We'll talk about the Wolves shutting down the Miami Heat in the second half. Turn that water off. The Bulls shocked the Sixers. And are the Clippers really? No, seriously, this time. Are they seriously maybe actually contenders? We'll talk about that and more on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen. We appreciate you being in every day or hanging out with us Monday through Friday. We've got great shows for you all throughout the week covering all things in the NBA universe. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm also co-host over at Locked On Nuggets. Joined tonight by Tony East. He's host of Locked On Pacers. You can find all of his work on Twitter / I guess they call it X now, at Tony R East. So you're just like Tony Reist now? Is that the thing? Is that how this goes?
Yeah, or Tonier.
Tonier East. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, we'll talk about what happened in the association on Monday night. Lots to get to. We're just going to cover games today. That's a quiet, no big trade stuff. So we actually get to talk about basketball, which is always refreshing and good to hear on a show about the NBA. And we'll start, Tony, with those New York Knickerbockers after getting a win versus the Phoenix Suns, in which Jalen Brunson scored 50. They got stomped by the Clippers on Saturday night in a very unsurprising game because, well, they flew in and played Friday night. They played Friday and then flew into LA and probably, didn't directly go to bed after they got into the hotel. But then, thanks to having Sunday off, they go in and they knock off the Los Angeles Lakers, the IST in-season tournament champion. Los Angeles Lakers, who raised the banner. They beat them on banner night, Tony. The Knicks get the win in this one, 114 to 109. Jalen Brunson leads the way with 29 points on 10 of 21 shooting, but Julius Randle was right there with him with 27 points and 14 rebounds. Randle goes 12 of 22 from the field, and they got 20 from quickly. For the Lakers, Anthony Davis goes for 32 points for the Knicks, who were without Mitchell Robinson, of course, for a few weeks. But Isaiah Hartenstein played absolutely terrific basketball. AD goes for 32 and 14, but is a -6 in his minutes. And LeBron goes for 25, but only on 10 of 23 shooting. So not an efficient night for the King and a -13. Massive win, I thought, for the Knicks. They built this lead really. They went down at half. They built the lead early, went down at half, and it looked like it was going to be back and forth. Broke it open at end of third, held on for the win. This is a great win for the Knicks.
A great win for the Knicks. And shout out Isaiah Hartenstein, not only for the numbers, but Jericho Sims starts at center today. Obviously, they're without Mitchell Robinson for a while. And Jericho Sims plays a little bit, and then he's out for the rest of the game with an injury. He only played 3.5 minutes. So they needed Isaiah Hartenstein like the whole game. Taj Gibson was not somebody they brought in necessarily to play a lot, but Tibbs loves him. He's a great vet. This is not a shot at Taj Gibson, but him playing usually means that they're really hurt, and they were today. They needed Hartenstein to be awesome. He was amazing. 17 boards, 17 offensive rebounds. If you're going to beat the Lakers, having more possessions than them is certainly a way to do it. They got to the foul line a lot. They got their shots up, and that was a big part of it. Hartenstein was a beast on the boards and helped them get all these extra chances where Randle was good, Brunson was good enough, and they got quickly off the bench. And the Lakers, man. How many players in the Lakers do you think shot over 43.5% LeBron James percentage in this game? You can see the stats, so you can answer it. It's 2. Rui Hachimura goes 3 for 6. Anthony Davis goes 14 for 22. Everybody else was having some trouble. Austin Reeves, I almost said Rivers. That's a different player. 6 for 15, 3 for 10 for D'Lo, 2 for 9 for Reddish, 3 for 13 for Taurean Prince. They just need one of those guys to step up if Bron's going to have a triple-double and AD's good. And they got none of them. They needed it.
D'Angelo, look, I'm sorry. D'Angelo Russell can't be on this team if they want to win a championship. Like, I like D'Lo. Who doesn't like D'Lo? Ice in the veins, tap, tap, tap. But, like, he is not a player that can play against these top-level guys. He's just not. He's just not a guy that can play against these top-level guys.
I've never been like the hugest fan of his game. The last time I saw him in person, he was taking it personal against Bruce Brown and looked awesome. So maybe the Lakers need to play against Bruce Brown's team every round of the playoffs.
Well, I think they need to play against the Pacers, right? Like against the Pacers with absolutely no rim protection and no perimeter, no point of attack defense. And D'Lo had a good game in that one, sure, versus Bruce Brown, who again, won when it actually mattered. But like, I am just not convinced that D'Lo can be your guy if you're serious about winning a championship. And the question there is like, okay, is Zach LaVine that much better? In my opinion, yes. Like in my opinion, like LaVine's a defensive liability, but he's not a guy that's going to absolutely disappear for you as often as D'Lo does. Like D'Lo tonight, like 3 of 10, but for me it was the defense. Like they were able to get what they wanted by putting him in screen actions, even without Mitchell Robinson, even without Jericho Sims, and that's a real problem. And I think just consistently that's kind of an issue. Meanwhile, the Knicks are fascinating because no Mitchell Robinson, they lose Jericho Sims. They're having to really kind of piece this thing together. And honestly, if you look at their overall kind of resume, they don't stand out from a metric standpoint. Like you don't look at them and go like, oh, wow, this is a juggernaut. But man, their eye test for me is so much better than the underlying stuff. Where I watch them, I'm just like, this is a tough ass team that knows what it's doing. And I really think that they're going to be a pain to deal with in the playoffs.
The Knicks just look no fun to play.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're going to beat you up on the inside. They're going to get up in your face on defense, and they're going to try to win the possession game when they can, which I already talked about. And they actually turned it over a lot today, which I'm sure Tibbs was not thrilled with. But if they're going to get 11 offensive rebounds, and they're going to beat you up the whole game, and Josh Hart's going to be flying in from all over the place, and Julius Randle's going to run through you like you're a bowling pin for 40 minutes or whatever he played, 43 minutes.
Yeah.
What month is it? It's just hard. It's not a fun experience. And like, if you're not ready for that game, you're like, I don't really want to play today. Like all it takes is 2 times with Julius Randle just trucking into you. You're like, oh, this sucks. Like, I don't want to do this. Right. So that's what the Knicks do to you. And so that's how they win the mental game every time. Even if their numbers aren't awesome, they can get away with stuff like that.
I noticed this tweet from Justin Russo, who covers the Clippers. I think this is interesting. The Lakers and Pacers have really struggled outside the in-season tournament. The Pacers are 7-12 outside of IST games. We'll talk about them later. The Lakers are just 9-12 outside of IST games. So like just an interesting kind of juxtaposition. I thought this was a great spot for the Lakers. Like I was on the Lakers tonight because I was like, oh, the New York's been in town all weekend and the Lakers are coming back off of the Spurs and they didn't really take those games seriously. Like this should be a good spot for them. And so this is a real impressive win for me by New York.
Not to be cringy and excuse teams who played in the in-season tournament finals, but like the Lakers lost to the Mavs, Spurs, and now the Knicks. They're 1-3 since the title game. The Pacers are 1-4, right? Like the emotional come down of this. Like I asked Dame this question. Someone asked him this. You were there too at the in-season tournament. Like, does this feel like a playoff game? And he's like, the game does, but it doesn't because we're not out. Like our season keeps going after this, right? And so you go from these like insanely high profile games. There's so much media. You're on ESPN. You're in Vegas. And it's like, all right, we're in Detroit on Monday. Like the Lakers are in San Antonio like 4 days later. It's really weird. And so like the attention shift and the mental shift is just, I think it's been hard for both of them. And you can see it in their records.
That's a great point. That's a really great observation.
But if you're a normal fan, you'll go, oh, excuses. And you're allowed to do that because it does sound weird to say.
We'll see how that impacts teams next year once we get maybe a bigger sample on this. On the other side, we'll talk about the Bulls, who continue to play really well without Zach LaVine. They shocked the Sixers despite a big night from Joel Embiid. Plus, we'll talk about the Wolves and their ability to lock down the Heat in a big win down on South Beach. We'll talk about all that and more on the other side on Locked On NBA. Right now, I want to tell you about eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd, the king, the legend, the man himself. If you play fantasy basketball, you've got to subscribe to that show. Like everyone I know that plays fantasy basketball tells me if they're any good at it, they listen to Josh. That's not me caping here. Josh is legitimately amazing. They partnered with him to bring out you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see if Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. One we're going to talk about today, about Tari Eason. He's still coming off the bench, but it doesn't really matter as Ime Udoka has found minutes for him. He's a strong fantasy value per minute option who becomes useful to everyone as those minutes tick up. Notably tonight, Tari Eason played for Jabari Smith Jr. down the stretch in the game versus the Cavaliers. There's a little bit more confidence in him. Eason also has the best on-off numbers in terms of defense in the NBA. Now, that's not going to impact fantasy, but what it does tell you is that he's proving valuable to how they defend, which is what Ime Udoka cares about. And that means he's going to get minutes, and minutes leads to fantasy production. Josh Lloyd from Fantasy Basketball Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. You don't want to have to go through and be looking for parts at all these places. And if you take it into the shop, sometimes you're going to be looking for parts all over town, and they're going to be like, oh, this other store got it, but then we thought it had in stock. No. You don't have to worry about that with eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure that your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash, baby. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us on a Tuesday, making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Matt Moore alongside Tony East. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows, just like this one, covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, let's flip coast, Tony. Let's head on out to the East Coast and let's pick up where the Chicago Bulls, I was shocked at this one, go into Philly, who have been one of the absolute best teams in the league, if not the best team in the league over maybe the last 3 weeks. And they face Joel Embiid, who has absolutely destroyed Nikola Vucevic every time he's played him and loves beating up on this team, especially with Andre Drummond as well. And the Bulls, without Zach LaVine, win again, and they win almost wire to wire, 108-104. They hold the Sixers to 104 points, despite Joel Embiid going for 40 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 turnovers, 2 blocks. Embiid was 15 of 28 from the field and 8 of 9 from the line. Tyrese Maxey in this one, 29 points, but just 9 of 23 from the field. I just can't believe how this Bulls team is respond. We thought I had written this team off, and now all of a sudden, they're starting to really be competitive night after night after night. Now I say that, a lot of this has been the Coby White resurgence, and it was him with the bench tonight that really flipped this game around. The minutes where Coby White was playing against the second unit for the Sixers, this was a night where the Sixers have been really good in winning the non-Embiid minutes. Tonight was really rough for them. They struggled in all those minutes. And, in part, look, you've got Alex Caruso and Javon Carter, and those guys vetted very well in this game. They got great minutes from Andre Drummond, I thought, in this contest, even though his stat line isn't necessarily explosive. He just played really within himself in the non-Embiid minutes. And it was enough alongside Coby White's 24 for them to get another impressive win.
14 for 37 for the non-Embiid Maxey Sixers tonight. Yikes. That is not going to win you those minutes. And yeah, their starters were good. Embiid was fantastic. But when Tobias Harris and Nick Batum combined for 2 made shots, that's not generally going to be a good night for your team. Okay, yeah, you nailed the nitty-gritty. We're talking about Coby White and just Coby White for a little bit here. This is insane. Where did this come from? 6-3, the Bulls are now in their last 9 games. In that stretch prior to tonight, because Basketball Reference takes a day to get them in. Coby White in the last 8 games entering the day, 25.6 points, 6.3 rebounds, 6.5 assists per game, 49.3% from the field, 49.4% from deep. So actually shooting better from 3 than from 2 in that stretch. 81.1% from the foul line. Holy crap. This dude is amazing all of a sudden, exploding and saving the Bulls season to the point that Bill Simmons is going to have to rename the Ewing theory to the LaVine theory. This is crazy. He's been unbelievable.
Nice reference. So
thank you.
I want to shout out Locked On Bulls here because in preseason, after like the Bulls' first or second preseason game, I was listening to the Locked On Bulls, and they were, there was a lot to complain about with the team. But one of the things that they said was Coby really brought it, and Coby looks more like a point guard than ever. And there were signs in preseason that Coby had kind of gotten it. And I will say this makes sense. Like, I didn't see it coming. It's one of those things that only makes sense in retrospect. But if we do if I think about, I once asked Mike Conley, I was like, how long does it take to be a good NBA point guard? And he was like, you don't really even start to understand anything until about 4 years in. He's like, you don't get really good at it until 6 years in. He's like, you just need to learn how to run a team, how to organize things, the timing on principles. You have to learn about how to see the defense. You have to learn about how to see the second level of defense. He's like, there's all of these things that you have to understand. Just you become comfortable with the pressure that is always on you with you're the one whose dribble and passes are being attacked. And we're kind of seeing this, right? Where Coby looks more like a point guard than he ever has. He doesn't look like a shooting guard. He looks more in control of the floor. He's able to navigate things. He's able to set up and just run pick and roll. And they've made things very simple for him. And it's been really effective. And it's one of the coolest stories in the league right now.
Agreed. 24, 8, and 9 tonight. So he'll up the assist and rebound numbers. His scoring in this stretch will go down, which whatever. I mean, it's just crazy. So the other part of this too, besides like he deserves all the credit for this, is I think the Bulls starters, Io started today as well, is just like much more naturally set of a pecking order now, right? Than with Levine, where it's like, who's number one, who's number two? Like, what are we like? It's very clear who brings it up, who's the fifth option. Sorry to Io DeSunmu, you're the fifth option, right? Who's fourth, who's third, who's second, who's first? It's way easier to like design what you're doing. Right. And that's good. And then they bring in all these defensive dudes off the bench, like Dalen Terry didn't suck tonight. And like, that's great. Andre Drummond scoops up 1 million rebounds. Him versus Embiid is hilarious all the time. So it just like all of a sudden their team just makes way more sense out of nowhere. And some of that's just that Coby White's been awesome, but some of that's like, it's just the roster makes sense right now.
Yeah. And it's going to get, this is one of those, it's like, this is going to get awkward a little bit for the Bulls. I will say this, look, the majority of this, the Bulls, even during this good stretch, like they are 18th in defensive rating in the last 2 weeks over at Cleaning the Glass. It's like they're still not a good defensive team. And the Sixers' problem tonight was offense. They had a 108 offensive rating because nobody, like you mentioned, nobody could hit a shot. So like a lot of this is just like the non-Embiid Sixers had a really rough
and like OT win over the Bucks, very close Pelicans win, very close Heat win, very close win tonight. Like it's the margin of this is not like.
But they're also not built to like get margin, you know. And we're talking about
they want the wins.
Yeah, we're talking about the difference between them like trying to be a 500 team versus a severely under 500 team. Last thing I'll say is Joel Embiid tried to draw a foul on the last play of the game and threw up an absolutely terrible floater instead of just trying to go for the bucket. And that he had such an. He said I think he's been the MVP this season so far, or at least I don't know if the MVP. I think he's probably like right there with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but. That one was tough way for the Sixers to lose tonight.
We chuckle at 6-3 in the last 9. They are now tied in the win column for the last play-in spot. Here come the Bulls.
Elsewhere, how about the Miami Heat taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves? Heat led this game by a lot early. Wolves started really slow. It's been a habit for them. And then the Wolves did what they do. And in the second half of this performance, as they get a 112-108 win, the second half of this game, here's what the Wolves defense did to Miami. 36% from the field, 6 of 17 from 3 for 35%, only allowed 6 free throws, and forced 6 turnovers in the second half as they hold the Miami Heat to just 42 points in the return of both Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo. Meanwhile, for the Wolves, they get 32 points from Anthony Edwards. They get 15 points from Naz Reid. They get 18 from Karl Anthony Towns. But the Wolves defense, especially Rudy Gobert, who Eric Spoelstra talked about after the game, impacting so much of the actions. This is the best defense in the league. And if you're going to be able to, this was a great test. You're on the road versus a now healthy Heat team, and you're able to lock them down and get a win on the road like this. That is a great win for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me about their defense, I just watched them a lot this weekend because they played the Pacers. It reminds me a little bit of like the Jason Kidd Bucks defense philosophy of just like arms everywhere, right? We're huge, baby. Bledsoe, Matthews, Middleton, Giannis. There's arms. There's no passing lanes. There's no space. Like Jaden McDaniels at the 3 is hysterical. Like that dude, it's crazy how much length and size he is disrupting people with. Towns is huge. Gobert's huge. Ant's pretty big for his position. Naz Reid plays with another big when he's in there. Kyle Anderson is goofy because of his speed, but is like so effective and huge. Like there's nowhere to go. There's never like an easy thing to crack into. So you either have to be really principled and take your time offensively, like the Pacers had some long possessions Saturday. I don't know how long the Heat possessions were in this game, but they only took 87 shots and had 18 free throws, so probably pretty slow. It's like it just takes a lot of work to get even decent shots. It's really impressive. Yeah. And now that Ant's this dude, they can score enough. Like they're just really freaking good.
On the other side, we'll talk about the Los Angeles Clippers, who put up a huge number on the Indiana Pacers. We'll talk about whether or not you can actually talk about the Clippers as contenders. Plus, we'll wrap up around the rest of the league as we wrap up here on Locked On NBA. Let's talk about game time. Buying tickets can actually be pretty stressful because you're navigating all these different sites. And like, I'm somebody that always wants to shop around. And I got to tell you, I'm dead serious about this. I really have started only using Game Time. One of the best things about it is I get frustrated when I think I'm buying tickets and I think that they're good. And then I get there and I don't like the view. You get to see the view right inside the app in Game Time. It's absolutely terrific. I'm using it to buy, tickets to the Avalanche for my wife for Christmas. That's one of the things that she's getting is tickets to some Avs games because she's absolutely a lunatic that then goes from someone that teaches literature to someone that absolutely screams and yells and says all sorts of vulgar things about the officials in person. It's amazing. And I can get that and save some money with Game Time. With Game Time, you see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. The all-in prices show your total up front. I love that. I am so annoyed when I get hit with those fees where it's like, but I thought they were this much. Game Time doesn't do that for you. You can turn on all-in pricing, and you know exactly what you're going to be paying. And you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps of the old app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON, NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Final segment here on Locked On NBA. Matt Moore, Tony East, and Tony. Why don't we talk about? I tweeted this back in November that the number 1 team on League Pass is the Indiana Pacers, and the number 2 team is whoever's playing the Indiana Pacers on League Pass. The Los Angeles Clippers continue to stay absolutely red hot, and they took that to a whole other level in this one as the LA Clippers go into Indiana and they put up 151 points. I'll roll through the numbers quickly here. James Harden, 35 points, 8 of 11 from 3 and 9 assists. Kawhi Leonard, 28 points on 12 of 18 shooting. How about Ivica Zubac with 16 boards in this one? Paul George with 27. Like, Paul George was like an afterthought. He had 27 freaking points in this one. Tyrese Halliburton struggled in his return from injury, just 8 points and 11 assists for Hallie on 3 of 12 shooting. They did get 34 points from Benedict Mathurin. You saw this one in person. What was this one like at the arena as the Los Angeles Clippers could not miss in this one?
Good God. Yeah. Second straight opponent to just scorched earth from 3 of the Pacers. And 151 sounds like hilarious. It's the 3rd highest for a Pacers. The Celtics and Hawks both beat that earlier this season. It's a concern, to say the least, the Pacers defense. I mean, they were up after the first quarter, so I guess they were like in it. But like the second half, the Clippers were just unreal on offense. Really, the second quarter, they scored 40 points, but like the Pacers kept up. 74-61 in the second half. 21 for Harden in the second half. All of that was in the fourth. Like, he's just drilling step backs left and right, setting up his teammates. Kawhi makes like the hardest shots on the planet look so freaking easy. Like he just takes 2 dribbles and turns his body, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, he's wide open. Paul George is like you said, like, oh yeah, he had 27 points. You didn't even realize he was out there half the time. Like they're rolling, and I really was excited to watch them in person because I've watched a lot of the Clippers. They're fun to watch, but I think Zach Lowe has nailed it with the way he described what they were doing poorly versus why they're good now. He described their offense right after the Harden trade as it felt very station to station, right? Do your pass, go where you're supposed to go. It's not imaginative. It's not fast. It's not hard to guard if you scout it well. Now it's way more free flowing. There's way more reads. Everybody's running hard. Everybody, like, the shots are way easier. And of course, Kawhi is playing at an MVP level in his last 6-7 games, whatever you pick the cutoff, but they look really connected and hard to guard. And so for a Pacers team that already can't guard anyone over 6'7" who can score effectively, it was just they could get whatever shot they wanted basically every time down the floor. They're good.
They have great lineup versatility too,
yes.
where like Norman Powell is able to come off and fits in different lineups. Daniel Tice is giving them really tough minutes. He's 2-0 versus the Pacers now, or 2-0 in games in Indiana, rather.
I saw that. That was funny.
Yeah, that was enjoyable. So like they're able to put together different lineups. The Russ minutes, they've actually been winning when it's not Russ and Harden, so they only kind of lose the Russ and Harden minutes, and that to me is very big. You mentioned Indiana, so I just looked this up because I was curious about it. So the Pacers have now given up 3,175 points through the first 25 games of the season. Tony, that ranks as the third most in NBA history through 25 games.
Are the other 2 teams above them both different Nuggets seasons?
Yes.
Yes.
The 1984 and 1991 Denver Nuggets had more. So Pacers on track for one of the worst defensive seasons in NBA history. I still like them to make the playoffs. I think the offense gets right eventually, and they'll start winning games. I think this team's still pretty good. But yeah, with the Clippers, I just think so here's the question. Okay, so this is all working, and everyone's going to be like, yeah, they have to stay healthy. And Kawhi's obviously the biggest like issue with that. Harden's had injuries, PG as well. But to me, the formula is pretty good here, where they're able to cover for Harden pretty well. Harden, I think one of the nice things is that Harden isn't like going full Harden all the time. It's enough for him to be happy and comfortable, and for them to put pressure. But then when teams are loading up on him, then Kawhi just goes into isolation, or PG hits a big 3. They have more balance by being, here's a weird thing. They have more balance by being unbalanced than when they were trying to like to get everybody moving. It's very much like whatever the defense is focused on, they'll punish you with. And I think that sets them up well for a playoff run if they're healthy.
Like, I don't know how Ty Lue does this, but he always does. But somehow he told James Harden and convinced him correctly, yo, you're the 3rd best scorer in our starting lineup. Like, you should not be taking this many shots. You just need to pass and like initiate. And you're still really threatening. Like, you can get everywhere and make step back threes. Like, use that to be the creator who runs the show. So you look at if you look at just the box score, you won't know this. But like, all his damage was in the 4th. And like, yeah, he deserves a ton of credit for that. It was unbelievable. Like, he took 8 shots in the first 3 quarters. Like, Norm Powell and Zubac and all these guys were taking more shots than him. And it was all Kawhi and PG, like, finding the crevices and scoring. If James Harden's just running the show and being like Houston Harden with the passing, but not the scoring, that they look great. They like everybody's role makes sense. It's kind of like the Bulls, except like star players instead of not star players. And it just makes a lot of sense. And like, yeah, the Pacers are an atrocious defensive team, like you just said, but they would have torn up anybody today. Like, they were getting everywhere. They were on fire from 3. They hit 50%. They never turned it over. Like, they did everything well. And I think Harden deserves a lot of credit for being willing to do that kind of role. He's like, yeah, I'll just pass. I'll just make everybody else have the easiest time ever.
Flip through a couple of the other games on our way out here. The Cavaliers get another win after losing Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. They beat the Hawks, and now they beat the Rockets. This was actually a really tough game. Rockets forced overtime, but they were able to get it done thanks to Sam Merrill, who stepped up and was huge in OT for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Don't check my Google searches because Sam Merrill career high might be in the Google searches.
Oh, man. Donovan Mitchell, 37 points, 6 assists in this one. Fred VanVleet did add 27 points and 17 assists, but they weren't able to get it done on the road. Houston continues to struggle in getting wins on the road, but this is a really good performance from them, I thought. The Denver Nuggets absolutely destroyed the Dallas Mavericks, despite the fact that Luka Doncic basically played like a half and a fraction. Like Luka played 36 minutes because he was going to go like the entire way, but he was done by late third quarter, was done for the night because he was a minus 29. He had 38 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists. He had some absolutely impossible three-pointers, and it did not matter at all because Denver got whatever it wanted offensively. If they don't have Lively, they have no rim protection. If they don't have Lively, they can't get anybody moving. The Nuggets were so comfortable getting into all their sets. Bounce back performance after the loss to the Thunder for the Nuggets. Jokic with a triple single.
Triple single. Oh, I love it. I wanted you to say it so bad.
Triple single, 8 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists for Jokic in a plus 16 effort. He was 3 of 8 for the field. Like they didn't need Joker tonight. That's how easy it was for them. Aaron Gordon with 21, Jamal Murray with 22, Reggie Jackson with 20, and a really good night for Peyton Watson, who made a bunch of highlight plays in this one as well. The Jazz get another win at home. The Jazz might be okay. The Nets are at the end of a West Coast road trip, but since they've gotten Lauri Markkanen back, like there's Simone Fontecchio was balling. Colin Sexton had 27. The Jazz might be okay. And the Kings put up 143 on the Wizards, and they get a win as well. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the Thunder, 39-5, and a win over the Grizzlies in their last game without Ja Morant from suspension, at least, as he returns tomorrow night.
I have to react to all these games in rapid-fire succession. 1, not a great road trip for Mikal Bridges. Shout out to Locked On Nets for having all the stats about that today. 2, Talen Horton-Tucker looks a little better recently. It's big news for the Jazz. 3, Cade Cunningham in the game you skipped was freaking baller and almost ended the losing streak for Detroit, but alas.
I didn't want to talk about that because I bet the Pistons money line. I thought this was the one. I was convinced that this was the one, and they were right there. They had it to 6, and they drew a foul with James Wiseman on Trey, and he missed both free throws, and the Hawks get a bucket, and that was the game. I was so sad for them. I want such better things for them. Shout out to Locked On Pistons.
4, Raptors and Hornets played. I think the Raptors and Hornets play 70 times a season. I actually don't think they only play 4 times. The Raptors win. And the last thing, Kyle Kuzma. Shout out to Kyle Kuzma on his pro day. That's all right. You're here to be calling the shot against the Kings, having a pro day. He was pretty good, even though the Kings, as they should, dispatch the Wizards.
27-8 for Kuzma. That's going to do it for Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. You can catch Tony over at Locked On Pacers as well as on Twitter at Tony R. East, Tony Reist. And you can catch me on Twitter at HP Basketball. Tomorrow, Jake Mass and John Corrales will break down all the action, including John Morant's return. Make sure to keep it right here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time.